Serrated claws sank deep into soft human flesh as the tac-tac warrior snatched the wailing child from his bed. The night was alive with chaos. Fires burned through the remote human colony, smoke billowing up into the stars. The colony was under siege, but Vor didn't care about the destruction. He had one job: retrieve the human boy, a seemingly insignificant task for a hardened tac-tac warrior. The alien's compound eyes glinted in the dark as he dragged the struggling child from his home, his insectoid legs clicking softly over the charred remains of shattered glass. He didn't know, nor did he care, that this child was different. He had just kidnapped a pure-blooded human boy from the birthplace of humanity itself, Earth. The colony burned behind them as other tac-tac raiders stormed through the settlement, slaughtering any who resisted and capturing those who didn't. Scuttled over the lifeless corpses of the boy's parents, his armored exoskeleton reflecting the orange glow of the inferno. The boy, Eugene Morgan, cried out, thrashing in the alien's grip. "Let me go." Eugene's fists beat uselessly against the tac-tac's armored body, but the alien warrior barely noticed. "Silence, worm," hissed, his antennae twitching in irritation. The boy screamed louder, struggling to break free. With a snarl, Vor struck Eugene hard across the face. The force of the blow split the boy's lip, and he tasted blood. Eugene's screams faltered, and he fell silent, tears streaming down his cheeks as the tac-tac warrior continued toward the waiting starship. They reached the edge of the colony, where a dark, angular starship squatted in a nearby field. Its anti-gravity engines hummed quietly, casting eerie shadows in the flames. Dragged Eugene up the boarding ramp and into the ship's cold, metallic interior. The child was tossed into a stark holding cell, his small frame crashing against the hard floor. For a moment, Eugene could only gasp, the air knocked from his lungs. The cell was cramped, with glowing force fields for walls, allowing him to see the other captives. Dozens of children, both human and alien, huddled in fear, their faces pale and hollow with despair. Eugene pulled himself to his feet, his hands gripping the glowing bars of his cell. He looked around wildly, but there was no escape, only the sight of other terrified captives staring back at him. A large tac-tac soldier approached, his carapace marred with battle scars. One of his eyes had been replaced with a glowing cybernetic implant, giving him a menacing appearance. He stopped in front of Eugene's cell, looking down at the boy with a mixture of amusement and disdain. What world did this come from? The huge alien rasped, his mandibles clicking. "Unregistered human colony," replied, his voice a low hiss. Lightly defended, it fell easily. "Good," the captain grunted. "Their young will sell well at the auction, especially this one." His compound eyes narrowed as he studied Eugene. "This one has spirit, perhaps too much." The ship jolted as it lifted off, leaving behind the ruins of the human colony. Through a small viewport, Eugene caught a final glimpse of the flames that had consumed his home, the destruction seared into his memory. His heart ached with grief. "Mama, Daddy," he whispered, tears blurring his vision. But deep within, a fire burned. His sorrow began to crystallize into something sharper, colder, resolve. They had taken everything from him, his home, his family, his entire world. But he wouldn't let them break him. He was human, and humans did not bend or break. Eugene sank to the floor, his small body trembling with exhaustion and fury. In the cell next to his, a young Trillian girl sobbed quietly, her small frame shaking with fear. The sight only fueled his determination. He clenched his fists, feeling his nails dig into his palms. "No," he whispered to himself, "I won't let them win." The tac-tac ship docked at a sprawling space station known across the galaxy as Hub. It was a hive of scum and villainy, where the desperate came to trade in lives. The children were marched single file from the ship, their feet dragging as they were herded through the station's grimy corridors, filled with the smells of sweat, oil, and desperation. Eugene's heart raced as he was shoved along with the others, his small fists clenched at his sides. The station was a nightmare of alien sounds and sights, with beings of every shape and size watching the children pass with cold, appraising eyes. They were led into a massive auction hall. Rows of cages lined the walls, each filled with weeping children. A stage stood at the far end, where captives were hauled one by one onto the auction block. Eugene's breath caught in his throat as he realized what was happening. "Please no," he whispered, but his voice was lost in the sea of terrified cries. Lot 47, healthy male human child, approximately 8 years old. The auctioneer's voice boomed over the noise. Eugene's stomach twisted as he was yanked forward by Vor, his feet stumbling on the cold floor. Bright lights blinded him as he was shoved onto the stage. His eyes squinted against the glare, trying to make out the faces of the bidders. A bloated, slug-like alien raised one slimy hand. 1,000 credits, the creature bellowed, its voice a sickening gurgle. 1,500. A new voice came from the back, a tall, augmented Krillitane with glowing red eyes. The price climbed higher as the two bidders fought for the human child. Eugene's heart pounded in his chest. Either of them would be a cruel master. Suddenly, the crowd fell silent as a cloaked figure stepped forward. The room seemed to part around him, as if the very air crackled with his presence. The figure threw back his hood, revealing the face of an aged tac-tac noble with intricate carvings etched into his carapace. 5,000 credits, the nobleman said calmly. His voice was like steel wrapped in silk. No one dared challenge him. The auctioneer, his voice trembling, declared, "Sold, to Lord Zor-El." Eugene's legs nearly gave out as the nobleman gripped his arm and led him off the stage. What now? Eugene's days as Zor-El's cupbearer passed uneventfully on the surface, but his mind was always plotting. Zor-El, the powerful alien noble, believed he had tamed the human boy, yet Eugene's spirit remained unbroken. Each night, when Zor-El was absent, Eugene would slip into the tech room, studying the alien machines. One night, while exploring the mansion's twisting corridors, Eugene discovered a room pulsing with strange energies. Inside, an array of alien technology and a glowing star map dominated the space. Eugene's eyes widened as he scanned the map, his fingers brushing through the holographic display. There, among the spiraling stars, was Earth. His heart pounded at the sight of his distant home, but the planet was so far away. Determined to escape, Eugene started tinkering with the alien technology. The machines were beyond anything he had ever seen, but humans were adaptable. Slowly, he began to understand the inner workings, making secret notes in his mind. But Eugene wasn't as invisible as he thought. Vortis, the envious tac-tac guard who had lost the boy at auction, had been watching from the shadows. His compound eyes glinted with malice as he observed the human's cleverness. The alien realized the boy was far more dangerous than he appeared. Vortis knew that capturing Eugene now, caught red-handed, would be the perfect revenge. One fateful evening, while cleaning Zor-El's quarters, Eugene overheard a conversation between Zor-El and a military leader. They spoke of an invasion, a devastating plan to attack the peaceful planet of Xanthoria. Eugene's fists clenched at the thought. Xanthoria was known for its healers, and its people wouldn't stand a chance against the ruthless invaders. An idea sparked in Eugene's mind. He needed to warn the Xanthorians. That night, he snuck into Zor-El's study and grabbed a small portable holoprojector. If he could reach a communication hub, he could send a message to Xanthoria and perhaps buy them time to prepare. As Eugene made his way through the mansion's halls, the holoprojector clutched tightly to his chest. A heavy hand suddenly grabbed him from behind. Vortis. The tac-tac warrior's eyes blazed with triumph as he yanked Eugene back, snarling, "Caught you, human." Vortis struck Eugene, sending him sprawling to the floor, the projector skittering across the cold metal. Pain flared through Eugene's body, but his resolve only grew stronger. He wasn't going to let Vortis win. With a surge of energy, Eugene launched himself at the alien, fists pounding against the Tac-Tac's exoskeleton. The two grappled on the ground, a tangle of flailing limbs and furious strikes. Eugene's desperation fueled his every move. He kicked at Vortis' legs, hearing a sharp crack as one of the alien's joints gave way. The Tac-Tac stumbled, and in that moment of weakness, Eugene scrambled to his feet, snatching up the holoprojector. He sprinted toward a nearby shuttle, the pain in his body screaming for him to stop, but his determination drove him forward. He had to escape. He had to warn Xanthoria. As he reached the shuttle and scrambled inside, Vortis was already hot on his heels. Eugene slammed the door controls, and the ramp clamped shut just as Vortis pounded on the exterior, denting the metal. The shuttle's engines rolled to life, and Eugene, fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls, guided the ship off the ground. Just as they lifted into the sky, Vortis pried the ramp open, dragging himself into the cargo hold. Eugene's heart raced as he saw the alien clambering inside, fury burning in his compound eyes. With a sudden wrench of the control stick, Eugene sent the shuttle lurching, throwing Vortis against the bulkhead. The alien crashed to the ground with a thud, but Eugene couldn't afford to stop. The coordinates for Xanthoria were punched in, and with a final glance at the sprawling space station below, the shuttle rocketed into hyperspace. Eugene sat back in the pilot's seat, his heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had escaped, but the battle wasn't over yet. He still had to warn the people of Xanthoria, and he knew that Vortis and Zor-El wouldn't stop until they caught him. Eugene barely had time to catch his breath before alarms blared inside the shuttle. He was on a stolen ship, and Zor-El's forces had likely tracked his escape. He knew it was only a matter of time before they would come after him. The Xanthorian planet was still hours away, and he needed a plan to stay ahead of his pursuers. His hands flew across the alien controls, searching for anything that could give him an edge. The shuttle's systems were far more advanced than anything he had ever seen on Earth. Fortunately, Eugene's quick thinking and adaptability helped him piece together the functions of each panel. He activated a cloaking device that masked the shuttle's location temporarily, buying him precious time. As the stars outside blurred in hyperspace, Eugene stared out at the vastness of the galaxy. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to think of home. Earth felt so distant, but his mission was clear now: save Xanthoria, and maybe, just maybe, he could find a way back to his own people. But that dream seemed far off as the shadow of Vortis loomed large in his mind. Sure enough, the ship's sensors blipped, indicating that multiple vessels were closing in. Zor-El had dispatched her best hunters. Eugene's heart pounded in his chest as he accelerated the shuttle, pushing it beyond safe limits. The engines whined under the strain, but he didn't slow down. The first of the enemy ships appeared on the scanner. They were sleek, black hunters, designed for speed and precision. Zor-El's forces weren't taking any chances. One wrong move, and they'd bring his shuttle down in seconds. Eugene's mind raced. He needed to shake them off, but he was outmatched in terms of speed and firepower. Then he remembered the star map he had seen earlier. There was a cluster of dense nebula clouds ahead, filled with electromagnetic disturbances. It was a dangerous region for any ship, but it was also his best chance to lose the hunters. Veering the shuttle hard to the left, Eugene made a break for the nebula. The enemy ships followed close behind, their weapons lighting up the void. Energy bolts streaked past his shuttle, close enough that the ship shuddered from the near hits. Eugene gritted his teeth, steering with everything he had. As the ship dove into the nebula's chaotic clouds, the sensors flickered and alarms screamed, warning of electrical surges. The visibility dropped to near zero as the electromagnetic storms raged around him. The hunters were still following, but the dense interference began scrambling their sensors as well. Eugene executed a daring maneuver, cutting the shuttle's engines and letting the ship drift silently through the storm. The nebula's interference hid him completely. His heart raced as the enemy ships sped past, unaware of his exact position. For a few tense moments, Eugene waited in silence, staring at the scanner. The hunters were searching, but with no clear signal to follow, they began to scatter in different directions. One by one, they disappeared from view. Eugene finally exhaled, restarting the engines and plotting a new course through the nebula. The danger wasn't over, but he had bought himself time. Hours passed before the shuttle finally emerged from the clouds, and the tranquil blue-green planet of Xanthoria came into view. The sight was breathtaking, but there was no time to admire it. Eugene knew the invasion fleet was already on its way. As he approached the planet's surface, Eugene activated the holoprojector, sending a warning message to the Xanthorian government. He explained the imminent threat and urged them to prepare for battle. After a tense few minutes, a response came through. A Xanthorian voice crackled over the speakers, acknowledging the message. They promised to alert their planetary defense force, but they had little experience in warfare. Eugene felt a surge of determination. He wasn't just running from Zor-El anymore, he was here to stop a war. The skies above Xanthoria were still ablaze with the remnants of battle, but Eugene knew the victory was temporary. In the command center, a sense of exhaustion weighed on everyone. The Xanthorian fighters had taken down several enemy ships, and the pulse generator Eugene created had given them a brief advantage. Yet, Zor-El's fleet was far from defeated. As Eugene looked at the tactical map, the pulse's effect was beginning to fade. Zor-El's ships were slowly recovering, and more reinforcements were approaching from the outer system. "How long until we can fire another pulse?" Vrex asked, his voice laced with desperation. Eugene shook his head. That was a one-time shot. The generator burned out from the overload. Vrex's eyes widened with fear, but Eugene placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We can still win this, but we need to think differently." Zor-El's tactics were brute force, but her arrogance might be her undoing. Eugene's mind raced, trying to outthink the conqueror. He knew that the Xanthorians couldn't survive another full assault, so they had to turn the tables before it was too late. Suddenly, the doors to the command center burst open, and a hologram of Zor-El appeared. Her image was larger than life, radiating menace and fury. "I underestimated you, human," Zor-El sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "That will not happen again." Eugene's muscles tensed as Zor-El's gaze locked onto him. "Your resistance ends now. I'll raze this planet to the ground and enslave what's left of its people." "Maybe," Eugene responded coolly, "but if you were so sure of that, you wouldn't be talking to me." Zor-El's eyes narrowed. "You think yourself clever, but all you've done is delay the inevitable. My forces are endless, and your planet is a mere speck. Surrender or Xanthoria will be nothing but ashes." Eugene's mind was already working through the options. He knew Zor-El was trying to intimidate him, but there was a kernel of truth in her threat. They couldn't fight a war of attrition. The Xanthorians didn't have the numbers or resources. However, Zor-El's overconfidence and reliance on her fleet were her weaknesses. "Why don't you come down and face us yourself, Zor-El?" Eugene challenged. "You're hiding behind your ships because you know we've got you beat." Zor-El's hologram flickered, and for a moment, Eugene thought he saw a flash of anger in her eyes. "You don't get to dictate terms, human." "Then stop talking," Eugene said, smirking. "Either invade or run back to your empire. But remember, when you face us directly, we'll be ready." Zor-El glared at him. "You won't survive this, human. I'll make sure of it personally." With a hiss, the hologram faded out. Eugene turned to Vrex. "She's coming." Vrex's face paled. "How do you know?" "Because I challenged her pride," Eugene replied. "She's arrogant, and that makes her predictable. She'll bring everything she has for the final assault." "But we can't hold them off," Vrex exclaimed. "We don't have to," Eugene said, a plan beginning to form in his mind. "We just need to lure her into a trap." The Xanthorians had something Zor-El hadn't accounted for. a planetary defense system hidden deep beneath the capital. It hadn't been used in centuries, but Eugene knew that if they could reactivate it, they could deliver a devastating blow to Zor-El's forces. The old defense grid, Vrex asked, his eyes widening in realization. It's been inactive for generations. Can it be brought online? Eugene asked. It's risky, Vrex replied, but if we can power it up, it might work. Good, Eugene said. Let's get to work. Time was running out as Zor-El's fleet reassembled in the upper atmosphere. The Anthorian engineers worked tirelessly to reroute power to the ancient defense grid, and Eugene stayed by their side, guiding them through the process. The defense grid was a massive weapon system, capable of launching energy beams powerful enough to destroy entire starships. It was their only hope. Just as the last connections were made, the alarms blared. Zor-El's fleet had begun its descent, and this time there was no holding back. Hundreds of ships darkened the sky, their engines glowing ominously as they prepared for the final strike. Shields of down to 20%, one of the Anthorian officers called out. We can't take another hit like that. Eugene gritted his teeth. Hold the line. The grid's almost ready. Zor-El's command ship appeared at the forefront of the fleet, a massive dark behemoth that dwarfed the other ships. Eugene knew that Zor-El herself was on board, ready to crush Danthoria once and for all. Suddenly, the defense grid hummed to life. Massive energy capacitors deep within the planet began charging, drawing power from the entire city's grid. The command center's lights flickered as the ancient system demanded enormous amounts of energy. Power levels are stable, Vrex said, excitement in his voice. We're ready to fire. Eugene stood at the control console, his hand hovering over the activation switch. Target Zor-El's command ship. We take her out, the rest will fall apart. The targeting system locked onto Zor-El's ship, and Eugene slammed his hand down on the activation switch. The ground shook as a massive energy beam erupted from the planet, piercing through the clouds and striking Zor-El's ship directly. For a moment, it seemed as if the ship had absorbed the blast, but then a massive explosion rocked the vessel. The ship's hull buckled, and secondary explosions rippled across its surface. In seconds, the once mighty command ship disintegrated into a cloud of debris. Cheers erupted in the command center as the rest of Zor-El's fleet began to scatter, leaderless and in disarray. Xanthoria's fighters took advantage of the chaos, picking off the remaining enemy ships with ease. Eugene collapsed into a chair, exhausted but relieved. They had done it. Zor-El's reign of terror was over, and Xanthoria was safe for now. Vrex approached him, his face full of gratitude. You saved us, Eugene. Eugene looked up, a weary smile on his face. We saved ourselves, Vrex. Zor-El underestimated us, but we showed her what happens when you push people too far. As the sun began to rise over the devastated city, Eugene knew that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were still countless threats out there. But for now at least, Xanthoria was free, and Eugene had proven, once again, that humans were far from helpless.